Hey there, welcome to this course on microeconomics. Microeconomics is about peeking into the minds of individuals, households, and businesses to see how they make decisions about stuff like buying, selling, and producing goods and services. Over the next 7 sessions, we are going to dissect how people and businesses make decisions. You might even start understanding why you keep buying things you don't need. My mission is that by the end of this course, you won't just know what microeconomics is, you'll be able to spot it happening in the wild, from the grocery store to those online shopping binges. Let's get started. Here's a quick overview of the topics we'll be exploring in this course. Each of these topics builds upon the last, giving you a solid foundation in microeconomic principles. We'll focus on how these concepts apply to everyday decisions, businesses, and government policies. In this first part or session, we lay the groundwork. Think of the concepts you will learn in this session as the essential toolkit you'll need to understand how economic decisions are made. Alright, let's break down quickly what we're going to cover in this jam-packed first session on understanding economic foundations. We'll cover the basics of what economics is all about, the differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics, and some essential tools like the production possibility frontier. These building blocks will help you analyze everything from personal decisions to global economic events. We'll start with the age-old question, why study economics? Well, let me tell you, it's not just about crunching numbers and drawing supply and demand curves. Economics is everywhere. It's more relevant to your everyday life than you might think. First off, let's talk about personal finance. We are talking budgeting, saving, and investment decisions, all things that have a direct impact on your wallet. Understanding the basic principles of economics can help you make smarter financial choices and secure your financial future. Then there's consumer choices. Ever wonder why you're so loyal to a particular brand or why you can't resist a good discount? Economics has the answers. We'll dive into the fascinating world of consumer behavior and uncover the psychology behind your shopping habits. And let's not forget about current events. From economic policies to market fluctuations to global trends, economics plays a crucial role in shaping the world around us. Whether you're following the news or navigating your own career path, a solid understanding of economics can give you the insights you need to make informed decisions. So the next time someone asks you why you're studying economics, just tell them you're learning how to see beyond the surface. Because economics isn't just about numbers. It's about understanding the world around us and making sense of the decisions we all face every day. Alright, get ready to put your economist hats. It's time to think like an economist. But what does that even mean? At the core of the economic mindset are a few key principles that shape the way economists view the world. First up, we've got scarcity. Yep, you heard that right. Resources are limited. Understanding that resources are scarce forces us to prioritize and make choices. After all, there's only so much to go around. Which brings us to our next point, choices. Every decision we make involves an opportunity cost. In other words, when you choose to do one thing, you're giving up the opportunity to do something else. It's all about weighing the alternatives and deciding what matters most to you. Picture this. You're happily dating someone, great. But technically, you're also giving up the opportunity to date everyone else out there. Think of all those potential meet cutes you're missing out on. Well, are you really? Not if you're an expert in multitasking, right? So regardless of whether you're happily committed or playing the field, just remember the economic principles at play. Every choice has its cost. We've also got trade-offs. Life is all about balance, and every choice involves balancing benefits and drawbacks. Sure, that new pair of shoes might make you feel like $1,000,000, but is it worth sacrificing your savings goals? That's the trade-off you'll have to consider. And finally, we've got incentives. What motivates people and businesses to do what they do? It's all about incentives, whether it's a financial reward, social recognition, or just the satisfaction of a job well done. Understanding incentives is key to understanding human behavior. So there you have it, the core principles of the economic mindset. By embracing these principles, you'll start to see the world in a whole new light. Get ready to analyze every decision you make, from what to have for breakfast to which career path to pursue. Because once you start thinking like an economist, there's no going back. Before we dive into the deep end of learning economics, I've got some tips to help you navigate these murky waters and come out on top. First things first, let's talk about curiosity. It's your best friend when it comes to learning economics. So embrace your inner explorer and let curiosity be your compass. Explore different economic perspectives, challenge assumptions, and never be afraid to ask yourself questions. After all, that's how we learn and grow. Next up, we've got to be analytical. Think of yourself as a detective, gathering clues, piecing together the puzzle of the economy. Gather data, analyze trends, look for patterns to support your thinking. The more analytical you are, the better equipped you'll be to make sense of the economic world. But don't stop there. Challenge conventions. Economics is all about pushing the boundaries and thinking outside the box. Don't blindly accept traditional solutions. Think critically and propose your own ideas. Who knows, you might just come up with the next groundbreaking economic theory. And finally, connect the dots. See how seemingly isolated events are interconnected by economic forces. Whether it's a spike in gas prices or a downturn in the housing market, there's always an economic explanation lurking beneath the surface. By connecting the dots, you'll start to see the bigger picture and understand how the pieces of the economic puzzle fit together. Alright, time to delve into a comparison of different economic approaches. We are exploring the differences between positive and normative economics. First off, let's talk about positive economics. This is all about answering the question, what is? We are talking cause and effect relationships, market behavior, and the impacts of economic phenomena. It's like playing detective and uncovering the facts behind the economic mysteries. On the flip side, we've got normative economics. Here the focus shifts to what should be. We are diving into questions of fairness, efficiency, and desirable outcomes. It's less about describing the world as it is and more about shaping the world as we want it to be. Now let's talk tools. In the world of positive economics, we're all about statistics, modeling, data analysis, and research methods. It's all about crunching the numbers and uncovering the empirical evidence. In normative economics, on the other hand, we're bringing out the big guns: ethical frameworks, policy analysis, cost-benefit analysis, and persuasive arguments. It's not just about the numbers, it's about making a compelling case for change. And finally, let's talk roles. In positive economics, we are laying down the factual foundation and striving for objective understanding. It's about uncovering the truth no matter where it leads us. But in normative economics, we are taking on a more active role. We are not just observers, we are advocates for change. We are shaping desired outcomes and advocating for solutions that align with our values and goals. So overall, two different approaches, two different mindsets, but both essential for understanding the complex world of economics. Alright, now we are ready to zoom in and out as we explore the differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics. It's like adjusting the lens on your economic camera. Sometimes you need to focus on the individual pixels, and other times you need to capture the bigger picture. First up, we've got microeconomics. This is where we zoom in on the nitty-gritty details of individual decision making. We're talking about consumers, firms, and markets, all the tiny cogs that make the economic machine tick. Key concepts here include supply and demand, market structures, pricing, and resource allocation. It's like looking at the world through an economic microscope. Now let's shift our focus to macroeconomics. Here we're zooming out to take in the broader view of the overall economic performance. Think national or even global scale. We're interested in the big picture indicators like GDP, unemployment, inflation, monetary policy, fiscal policy, and economic growth. It's like stepping back to see the forest instead of just focusing on the individual trees. Now let's look at some examples. In microeconomics, we might be interested in why coffee prices change, how competition affects businesses, or the factors influencing your purchase decisions. These are small-scale phenomena that can have big implications for individual actors in the economy. But in macroeconomics, we're interested in the grander scheme of things. We might explore the impact of government spending on inflation, the causes of economic recessions, or global trade patterns. These are the big picture issues that shape the economic landscape on a national or global level. So whether you're zooming in to study the intricacies of individual decision making or zooming out to analyze the broader trend of the economy as a whole, both microeconomics and macroeconomics offer valuable insights into how the economic world operates. Alright, it's time to now talk about economic systems, the blueprints that shape how resources are allocated, decisions are made, and economies operate. It's like choosing the operating system for the economy's computer. And trust me, there are a few options to consider. First up, we've got the centrally planned economy. In this system, the decision-making power rests in the hands of the government. From what goods to produce to how resources are allocated, it's all determined by a central authority. Think of it like a big economic chessboard with the government pulling the strings behind the scenes. Examples of countries that have adopted this system include Cuba and the former Soviet Union. Now let's flip the script and talk about the free market economy. Here the decision-making power lies with individuals and businesses, guided by the invisible hand of capitalism. It's like a giant economic marketplace where supply and demand dictate the rules of the game. The invisible hand is the idea that individual self-interest, when left unchecked, can lead to overall economic prosperity. Countries like the United States and Japan are prime examples of economies that embrace the free market system. But wait, there's more. We can't forget about mixed economies. These are like a blend of the best of both worlds, combining elements of both centrally planned and free market systems. In a mixed economy, the government plays a role in regulating the economy and providing public goods while also allowing for individual freedom and market competition. Many countries, including the US and most European nations, operate under a mixed economic system. So whether it's central planning, free markets, or a little bit of both, each economic system has its pros and cons. By understanding how these systems work, we can better grasp the forces that shape our economic landscape and influence our everyday lives. Alright, in order to examine production and opportunity cost, economists find it useful to create a simplified model of an individual or a nation that can choose to allocate its scarce resources between the production of two goods or services. For now, we assume that these resources are being fully employed and used efficiently. Imagine an economy that produces only two products. This handy graph illustrates the maximum combination of these two goods, let's call them products A and B, that an economy can produce given its resources and technology. The Production Possibilities Frontier, or PPF, highlights the trade-offs that arise from scarcity. After all, resources are limited and we can't have it all. The curve itself represents the boundary between what's attainable and what's not with the current resources at hand. Now take a look at the graph. You'll notice the zone of inefficient production, where resources are not fully utilized and we are not operating at our full potential. On the other hand, there's a zone that's simply infeasible with the resources available. We are talking about points beyond the curve where we are asking for more than what's possible given our constraints. So the PPF is like our economic roadmap, showing us the possibilities and limitations of production in an economy. By understanding the PPF, we can make informed decisions about resource allocation and efficiency. Alright, let's dive deeper into the concept of the production possibility frontier using a mouth-watering example, baking cookies and cakes. Imagine we are running a bakery with limited resources. We've got ovens, ingredients, time, and of course our talented bakers. Now take a look at the graph. It represents the different combinations of cookies and cakes we can produce given these limitations. The key here is the constant trade-off. For every one cake we bake, we must give up 2 cookies. This is reflected by the straight line on the graph, indicating that no matter how much we produce, the sacrifice in terms of cookies remains the same. So moving from one point to another signifies giving up 2 cookies to enjoy 1 cake, or vice versa. And the principle applies consistently throughout the curve. Now let's think about it practically. If we decide to use all our ingredients and oven space for baking 5 cakes, we simply have none left for cookies. This constant opportunity cost forces us to make choices. Do we prioritize cakes over cookies or vice versa? Each choice comes with its own delicious reward, but it also means giving up something else in return. So the production possibility frontier isn't just a theoretical concept. It's a practical tool that helps us understand the trade-offs we face in allocating resources and producing goods. By embracing this concept, we can make more informed decisions about how to best utilize our limited resources and maximize our production efficiency. Alright, let's explore the concept of increasing opportunity cost using an exhilarating example. Building cars and rockets. Imagine we are in a high-tech manufacturing facility with limited resources. Think skilled engineers, specialized materials, and cutting-edge technology. Now take a look at the graph. It illustrates the different combinations of cars and rockets we can produce given these constraints. The key difference here is the curved line on the PPF. Unlike the straight line we saw earlier, this curved line indicates increasing opportunity cost. As we allocate more resources to building rockets, which are highly complex and resource intensive, the sacrifice in terms of cars, which are relatively standardized, becomes progressively larger. This reflects the increasing difficulty of shifting resources from one product to another. Now let's dive into the graph. Imagine we start at point A on the PPF, where all the resources are devoted to producing only cars. We can produce a total of 15 cars at this point. Now as we move from point A to point B on the PPF, we give up one car to produce one rocket. It's a relatively small trade-off because the resources we are using for rockets weren't very effective in making cars to begin with, and probably were better suited to just making rockets. But as we continue along the curve, the trade-offs become more significant. Moving from point B to point C, we give up 2 cars to produce one rocket. And from point C to point D, it's even steeper. Now we are sacrificing 3 cars to produce the same additional rocket. It almost seems like we are now forcing car engineers to make rockets. This reflects the increasing specialization of resources needed for rockets, limiting our capacity to produce cars. Whether facing constant or increasing opportunity costs, understanding these trade-offs empowers us to make informed decisions about resource allocation, product strategies, and overall economic pain. Imagine a world where countries remain isolated, producing everything they need themselves. While this may seem self-sufficient on the surface, it actually limits their potential for growth and prosperity. Trade is the key to unlocking a universe of possibilities and accessing goods and services that they couldn't efficiently produce on their own. Now let's meet 2 friends, Kevin and Bob, both with a craving for cookies and cakes. Kevin can whip up 6 delicious cookies in an hour, while Bob can manage only 3. On the flip side, Bob can bake 6 cakes in the same amount of time compared to Kevin's 3. Here, Kevin has an absolute advantage in making cookies, while Bob excels in making cakes. This concept applies to countries too. Nations with absolute advantages in specific goods can specialize, focusing their resources on what they do best. By doing so, they can increase their overall productivity and efficiency. And this is where trade comes in. By exchanging goods and services with each other, countries can enjoy a wider variety of products without sacrificing their own specialties. So whether it's Kevin and Bob swapping treats or countries trading goods and services, the principle remains the same. By leveraging their absolute advantages and engaging in trade, everyone comes out ahead. Now let's take our cookie and cake example to the next level. Imagine Kevin discovers a new faster way to bake cookies, increasing his output to 8 cakes per hour. Okay? Suddenly, Kevin has the absolute advantage in both cakes and cookies. But what about Bob? How do we decide what role he plays in this scenario? Comparative advantage is the secret sauce that determines who should specialize in what, even when one party has an absolute advantage in everything. Despite Kevin's newfound ability to produce both cakes and cookies more efficiently, Bob still has a comparative advantage in making cakes. But how does that work? Well, it's all about opportunity cost. While Kevin can produce both cakes and cookies more efficiently in absolute terms, he still gives up more cookie production when he switches to making cakes compared to Bob. In other words, the opportunity cost of producing cakes for Kevin is higher than it is for Bob. So by focusing on their comparative advantages and trading with each other, both Kevin and Bob can produce more cookies and cakes overall. And that's the beauty of trade. It's not just about absolute efficiency. It's about maximizing overall production and benefiting from specialization. Now that we've introduced comparative advantage, let's see how Kevin and Bob decide who produces what based on their opportunity costs. Take a look at the table which shows their production possibility frontier or PPF for cakes and cookies, along with the calculated opportunity cost for producing one cake and one cookie for both Kevin and Bob. Starting with Kevin, baking 8 cakes costs him the opportunity to bake 6 cookies. So producing one cake costs him 0.75 cookies. Alternatively, producing one cookie costs him 1.33 cakes. On the other hand, for Bob, producing one cake costs him 0.5 cookies, while producing one cookie costs him 2 cakes. Based on these opportunity costs, it's clear that Kevin has a lower opportunity cost for producing cookies, which is 1.33 cakes, compared to Bob's 2 cakes. Similarly, Bob has a lower opportunity cost for producing cakes, which is 0.5 cookies, compared to Kevin, which is 0.75 cookies. So in this scenario, Kevin should focus on producing cookies where he has the comparative advantage, while Bob should focus on producing cakes where he has a comparative advantage. Another easier way to consider who should produce what is by comparing their efficiencies. Kevin is 1.33 times more efficient than Bob when it comes to making cakes, but is twice as efficient when it comes to making cookies. So it makes sense for Kevin to focus on cookies and let Bob handle cakes. By specializing in what they do best and trading with each other, both Kevin and Bob can maximize their total output of cakes and cookies, leading to greater overall efficiency and also prosperity. Now that we've explored comparative advantage and how Kevin and Bob decide who produces what, let's delve into the concept of terms of trade. Take a moment to review the opportunity cost table again, which we've already seen in the previous slide. As we've established, Kevin has a comparative advantage in producing cookies, while Bob excels in cakes. This specialization allows them to maximize their total output of cakes and cookies. But how do they determine the terms of trade, the exchange rate at which they'll swap cakes for cookies? Well, it's all about finding a mutually beneficial exchange rate that allows both parties to gain from trade. In this case, a cake can be traded for anything between 0.5 to 0.75 cookies, or equivalently, a cookie can be traded for anything between 1.33 cakes and 2 cakes. To find the sweet spot for both Kevin and Bob, they could agree on a trade of, say, a cake for 0.66 cookies or a cookie for 1.5 cakes, somewhere in between the two numbers, right? This exchange benefits both parties. Kevin and Bob can both end up with more cookies and cakes than what they would have achieved if they had produced independently. So by engaging in trade based on mutually beneficial terms, Kevin and Bob can further enhance their efficiency. This demonstrates the power of trade to create value and expand economic opportunities for all parties involved. Now let's see how both Kevin and Bob are better off because of their trading arrangement. Let's walk through a scenario. Kevin bakes 6 cookies and Bob bakes 6 cakes. Now let's assume that Kevin trades 2 cookies for 3 cakes with Bob. As a result of this trade, Kevin ends up with 3 cakes and 4 cookies, while Bob ends up with 3 cakes and 2 cookies. You can verify the math yourself. Both of them are left with a combination of goods that lies beyond their individual production possibility frontiers, highlighting the mutual benefits of trade. On the slide, you see the PPF tables with 3 cakes and 3.75 cookies highlighted for Kevin, which lies on his original PPF, and 3 cakes and 1.5 cookies highlighted for Bob, that too lies on his original PPF. But due to trade, we are able to achieve combinations for both Kevin and Bob that are beyond their respective PPF. This demonstrates how trade has allowed both Kevin and Bob to access combinations of goods that were previously unattainable for them individually because now Kevin is left with 3 cakes and 4 cookies, which is beyond his PPF, and Bob is left with 3 cakes and 2 cookies, which is also beyond his PPF. Up until now, we've primarily looked at comparative advantage and trade from the perspective of output produced. However, it's also valuable to consider input resources such as the time required to produce goods. Imagine that Kevin and Bob are trying to identify the best way to allocate their time between baking cakes and cookies. Kevin can produce a total of 24 cakes in 3 hours or 24 cookies in 4 hours, while Bob takes 4 hours to produce 24 cakes or 8 hours to produce 24 cookies. Comparing their efficiencies in terms of time, we find that Bob takes 1.33 times as much as Kevin when it comes to cakes, but twice the time when it comes to cookies. So just like before, it still makes sense for Kevin to focus on cookies and let Bob handle cakes. By considering input resources along with output produced, we reaffirm the principle of comparative advantage and the rationale behind specialization and trade. This holistic perspective allows us to make more informed decisions about resource allocation and production strategies. Now we'll dive into the concept of cost-benefit analysis, a fundamental tool for decision making in economics. First, we differentiate between explicit costs and implicit costs. Explicit costs are the straightforward, quantifiable expenses associated with a decision, such as the cost of raw materials, labor costs, rent, and utilities. These costs are relatively easy to identify and measure. On the other hand, implicit costs represent the opportunity costs associated with the decision, the benefits or income you could have gained from choosing an alternative option. These costs are often less obvious, but are equally important to consider. For example, if you decide to start your own business, you might be giving up a steady paycheck for another job. The lost income from that job represents an implicit cost of your decision. Next, we introduce the concept of marginal analysis, a powerful framework for analyzing incremental changes in an activity. Marginal analysis involves comparing the additional benefits and costs associated with making small adjustments to an existing situation. For instance, let's consider a bakery contemplating producing an additional batch of cookies. The marginal benefit would be the extra revenue generated from selling these cookies, while the marginal cost would include the additional cost, which would include the additional ingredients, labor, and utilities needed for producing this extra batch. By comparing the marginal benefit with the marginal cost, the bakery can determine whether producing the additional cookies is a worthwhile investment of their resources. By understanding and applying cost-benefit analysis and marginal analysis, individuals and businesses can make informed decisions, weighing the trade-offs involved and striving for optimal outcomes. Now, we'll dive deeper into the concept of marginal analysis and take a closer look at the table provided. The table presents data on the marginal cost and marginal benefit associated with consuming additional slices of pizza. So MC here stands for marginal cost and MB here stands for marginal benefit. The marginal cost remains constant at $1 for each additional slice, reflecting the additional cost incurred with each slice consumed. On the other hand, the marginal benefit decreases with each additional slice consumed. This reflects the diminishing utility or satisfaction gained from each additional unit of consumption. The first slice is heavenly, but the second slice doesn't feel the same. As you consume more slices, the enjoyment or benefit derived from each slice diminishes. The principle of marginal analysis dictates that individuals should continue consuming as long as the marginal benefit exceeds the marginal cost. In other words, you should consume until the point where the additional satisfaction gained from consuming one more unit, which is the marginal benefit, equals the additional cost incurred, which is the marginal cost. Looking at the data, we can see that the marginal benefit exceeds or is the same as the marginal cost for the first 5 slices of the pizza. However, beyond the 5th slice, the marginal benefit falls below the marginal cost, indicating diminishing returns. Therefore, according to marginal analysis, individuals should stop consuming pizza after the fifth slice, where both the marginal benefit and marginal cost are equal to 1. This example illustrates how marginal analysis helps individuals make rational consumption decisions, maximizing their utility or satisfaction while also minimizing costs. By applying marginal analysis to various decision scenarios, individuals and businesses can optimize their choices and allocate resources efficiently. So far, we've covered a lot of ground in understanding economic foundations, from the principles of scarcity and opportunity cost to the concepts of comparative advantage and cost-benefit analysis. We'll shift our focus to market dynamics, demand and supply in our next session. Get ready to explore how the forces of demand and supply shape market equilibrium and drive economic outcomes. See you there.